Welcome back. In this episode, we are going to look at predicting the maximum OVR for your cards. In previous episodes, I showed you how to determine which ones you might want to keep, so now you might want to figure out what they're going to look like after you've leveled them up and what their ultimate OVR might be for a particular grade rating. Knowing this, you can compare the player against your existing lineup and determine how he stacks up and whether or not he is worth the investment. So let's walk through a couple examples and see how this all works out. Similar to the last video, you're going to find that there are two ways to do this. There's a quick and dirty way, and then there's a more detailed, explicit way. And I'm going to walk you through both. We'll start with the simplest case, and that is of a player that actually already is a diamond. When a player is already a diamond card, we don't have to worry about the grade increase because it's already been assigned and will never change. So all we need to do is figure out what he's going to look like after he's been leveled up all the way to level 20. Given that a player starts at level 1, by level 20 he will have leveled up 19 times. So if you take 19 and multiply this by the 3 enhancement points that you get per level, you will find that this comes to 57 enhancement points. Now what we do is we take these 57 enhancement points, add those to his existing scores, sum that all up, divide it by 5, and there we have the OVR that he will have at level 20 as a diamond level player. So that's the more precise method of doing this. Let's take a look at the simpler method, which is very similar to our last video. We're going to take the 57 enhancement points that he's going to gain. We're going to divide that by 5, and we're going to find that that comes to a number that's between 11 and 12. Basically, the player is going to be adding an additional 11 to 12 OVR to what their existing OVR is. So we can see that Kano is at OVR 86, and when we add 11 additional points to this, this brings us up to 97. So Kano at level 20 would be OVR 97. So one final note on this before we move on. If you have a player that you've actually already leveled up a few times, you wouldn't be adding the full 57. You'd have to figure out how many enhancement points he already has gotten through his existing level, subtract that from the 57, and add the remainder. Hopefully that seems obvious. At this point, I'd like to make an aside. If you haven't had a chance to view the previous videos, you're going to find that as we go on, I'm going to make more and more references to stuff that I've already covered in those. So unless you're familiar with grade increases and the ranges that you might get for various grade levels and other information about the cards, you probably want to go back and watch those videos before continuing. But for now, let's go ahead and continue with another example. Let's take a look at David Price here, taking note that his OVR was 74. So what we first need to do is we need to figure out what the base card for David Price looks like, and from that we will calculate what he will look like at max level and at various grade levels. So using the technique from our previous episode, we're going to take his existing scores, add them all together, and we're going to take his grade increase ratings, add those all together, subtract the grade increase from his current scores, divide that number by 5, and that will tell us the OVR of his base card. Let's continue using the precise method, and we're going to do this in 2 steps. First, we'll figure out what he's going to look like at level 20, once again, using the same technique, and then we're going to figure out what he's going to look like at various grade levels. So, as you recall, at level 20, he will have gained 57 additional points, enhancement points. We're going to add that to the sum of his base card's scores. We're going to take that number and divide it by 5, and that will tell us what he looks like as a base card at level 20. Now the next step is to predict what he's going to look like at various grade levels. In order to do that, let's re-reference the table that I've shown you before. In order to finish our projection, we need to know what grade we will ultimately be upgrading this player to. So for most players, that's going to be that they're going to be targeting diamond grade players. So for those examples, you can see the range is from 55 to 75 additional grade increase points that a card would get, and we're going to use 75 as an example for the optimum case where the card gets the actual best grade increase, so we can predict true maximum. Whereas if we took a look at gold, we will use 50 for those examples, and if I do a silver, I'll probably use 30 as well. That being said, let's return to David Price's card and look at our previous numbers, and we will go ahead for projecting a diamond. Once again, we'll use a grade increase of 75. We'll add that to his scores, divide that all by 5, and come out with what he would look like as a maximum grade diamond player. And similarly, if we wanted to do a projection of him as a gold, instead we would add 50 and divide that number by 5, and he would look like this as a gold player. Okay, so all of that was using method 1, the more precise version. In most cases, the second method will be sufficient and is a lot faster, and we don't have to deal with as much adding and subtracting. We do need to find what the base card was, so if you recall, this is what our base OVR was. We'll add additional 11 points of OVR from the level 20 enhancements, and we'll take the 75 points from diamond level and divide that by 5 to come out with how many additional points he would get from being a diamond grade increase, and add that all together, and that will give us roughly the same OVR. Now that we've looked at this in detail and we've gone through the precise method, let's stick with the quick and dirty method and go through a few more examples. You just saw that a max grade diamond would gain an additional 15 OVR, whereas a gold would gain an additional 10 OVR. Remembering that, we can quickly calculate some additional cards. Santana here, for example, is OVR 70. Adding 11 points for leveling up to 20 will give us 81. An additional 15 OVR on top of that brings us to 96. So a diamond level 20 Santana would be OVR 96. As you can see, that's pretty quick, but just one last note on this, because this is the quick method, there will be some rounding errors, so you might be off by an OVR at the end, but it should give you a rough idea what you're talking about for your end player. Now, all that said, I've built out a tool that's going to make this a lot easier for the people who don't want to manually do all the math, but they do want more precise values. And in a future episode, I will show you the tool and walk you through how to use that so you can make more accurate and faster predictions. So until then, good luck with your card hunting.